Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Wolverine podcast here on Monday, September 8th. A lot to get to today. Of course, Anthony Broom here with Chris Ballas and Clayton Safey, as we are every Monday night here throughout the football season live at 6 p.m. And we're coming off a, quite frankly, terrible football weekend. We'll talk about Michigan's game for the local folks. The Lions didn't just laid a complete egg. So a Saturday and Sunday to forget. But as far as the Saturday goes, a lot to address here. So, fellas, welcome back. It seemed like everyone on the Michigan beat had some sort of travel struggle getting back from Norman. So hopefully you guys got it in a somewhat reasonable clip last night.
1:30 in the morning, but at least we didn't have like an hour's worth of sleep and then jump on an early flight. So, and they did make room for me. I purchased my ticket months ago and, checked in a day early, and they said, well, we're going to have to see if we got room for you. And I'm like, the reservation holds the plane, the seat, right? And I don't think you know how it works, but apparently they made enough room for me. So here we are.
Yeah, we actually got it. Our flight got in earlier than it was scheduled to, so we'll take it. But no, great weekend outside of the game in Norman. What a cool place. Atmosphere was outstanding. I mean, it was extremely loud, and the bars right across the street from the stadium. They got a good setup down there. That was really cool. And Oklahoma City the night before went to a nice dinner at Mahogany Steakhouse with some subscribers, including 97 Rose, one of our best. So that's an awesome trip. A lot of Michigan fans made it down. There were a ton of them in the stands, a lot of them outside of the stadium, a bunch of them in town the days before the game. And certainly, was outside of the game, I think a good trip that a lot of people wanted to take, kind of a bucket list type of item.
Yeah, thanks to 97 Rose, GR Law, Trammell 3, all the guys from the board. We had a blast on Friday night. Like you said, that was the best part of the trip. But hey, what are you going to do? You're going to lose some road games. And the disappointing part was how they played, guys. If you lose a hard-fought game, you play well, that's one thing. But to crap the bed like they did is really, really kind of sad.
Yeah, we're going to talk about all that. I'll just say on the atmosphere, I can't say I've ever been to a road game before. And I get it. Like Michigan, Oklahoma hadn't played in 50 years and the non-conference matchup. But I thought it was pretty cool when Oklahoma played the hype video before the teams ran out onto the field. It kind of celebrated the histories of both of those programs. It was kind of emblematic of the hospitality that everyone got down there that was there for the first time. So shout out to Norman. Shout out to Oklahoma football. I thought that was a pretty great atmosphere. Wish the game was a little bit better, but a lot of fun and worth the trip regardless. So we will go back and put a bow on this Oklahoma game and maybe what it might say about what comes down the line. We're going to talk about Sherrone Moore's press conference. Interim head coach has been named. It will be Biff Poggi for these next two Saturdays. We'll discuss that. And as we do at the end of every week, we will take your questions, both folks on the board and over here in the chat. I know there are a couple super chats. I'll get to you first. We'll do some housekeeping, though. Tonight's show is, of course, brought to you by our friends over at homefieldapparel.com. Head on over to Homefield. Their Michigan collection is incredible, whether it's T-shirts, sweatshirts, heck, even socks, hats, you name it. Yeah, you're going to want to re-outfit yourself for not just this Michigan football season, but a pretty awesome basketball team to get ready for as well. So, listen, you got fall birthdays coming up. Maybe you have some fall weddings and people have stuff on the registry and you're like, I don't want to get what's on the registry. I'm going to get them some clothes instead. Go with Homefield. Christmas, get that shopping out of the way. Go with homefieldapparel.com. So be sure to re-outfit yourselves today. Cooler weather on the horizon. And for the folks that live in warmer weather spots or just want better everything, Homefield Apparel has what you're looking for. So head on over there today. And we appreciate their sponsorship. We are also brought to you today by, of course, ourselves with the promo code UM1. That'll get you 2 months of access to our site for a single $1. It's an incredible deal, the best deal in America per our Clayton Safey. So take advantage of that today as well. That's going to get you deep into this football season. And who knows what we'll have to talk about by then. But in the here and now, what we have to talk about is a game on Saturday night that I've said this, I've now been on twice since the game ended, was not as close as the score indicated, despite it being a one-score game. There were several shots to shotgun blasts to the foot, a lot of self-inflicted wounds, offensive game plan not good, offensive protection even worse. There were injuries. It was just kind of a night to write off. And yet, as in the bold predictions on Saturday, I wrote there was going to be a point in the game where Bryce Underwood in the fourth quarter and the Michigan offense would have a chance with the ball down one score to tie the game, and they didn't come through. But I guess the question I want to start with, well, I'll start with this because I've been on, Chris has been on with the Skiing Pod, which dropped a couple hours ago. Take a look at that. Clayton, what were your thoughts on what we saw Saturday night?
Yeah, and really to your point, the Dominic Zavada missed 32-yard field goal loomed large the entire game because it was 21-13 with the football in the fourth quarter. Michigan could have come down and scored a touchdown and 2-point conversion to tie. But if he had hit that field goal earlier in the game, touchdown would have given them the lead after everything that had happened in that game. And I think, it's a credit to taking advantage of some mistakes from Oklahoma, interception, the muff punt that Cole Sullivan jumped on. He's a baller. He just goes and gets the football. Michigan didn't turn it over themselves, but so much went wrong outside of just that. The offensive line, I think, was the number one thing that doomed Michigan in this game because they had no run game outside of the 75-yard run from Justice Haynes. They had no pass protection. I thought Bryce Underwood started the game off strong, 5 of 9, 76 yards. And then I think he was then 6 of 14 just a few possessions later with 77 yards, right? There was this lull when the pass protection broke down and Oklahoma realized that Michigan wasn't going to be able to protect. They could creep up, and kind of just focus on stopping the run against an offensive line that wasn't getting much push. So that was the number one concern. And then the defense was obviously disappointing at times as well. The 2-minute drive before half, the long 16-play drive at the end of the game. You didn't have your timeouts at that point because you had to take 2 on offense. So, a bad punt leads to a short field. So there's just so much that went wrong in this game. A very disappointing display, I thought, from Michigan. The third downs on either side were extremely disappointing as well and really told the story of the game. Michigan couldn't convert third downs. Michigan couldn't get many first downs in general. I think 3 of their first 6 or 7 came via penalty. And then Oklahoma on the other side was getting those third downs. John Mateer was outstanding and looks like the Heisman frontrunner at this point, and is the Heisman frontrunner right now. Deservedly so, because he was doing everything he could with his arm, with his legs. So it was Oklahoma's night. It was certainly not Michigan's night, and they have a ton of question marks going forward now without their head coach.
I'd say I echo all of that. The biggest concern to me was the offensive line. We said going into the year, everybody was pissed off at us for pointing out, hey, I thought they needed to get more help in the portal. They didn't. They said they thought that the guys that were out there weren't worth the money or weren't better than the guys they had. I don't think that's true. Looking at some of the guys they might have been able to get and looking at how these guys really performed on Saturday night, it was embarrassing at times, honestly. And we need to put that super chat back up because he paid $4.99 for it here. And
I was going to get to it.
Yeah, no, I wasn't sure if it disappeared for a reason, but he said it looked like the 2014 O-line. Also separate from that, do we keep smash mouth run first style? I don't think so. And I don't think that's the strength of this team. I don't think it was really, there were no strengths last year, but now you've got a quarterback that, okay, you're paying this much money. You saw the game plan last week, and I thought, wow, it was unpredictable. Guys were going one way. Max Bredesen's going one way. The ball's going the other while the defense chases him. And then on Saturday night, it almost seemed like they panicked. And kind of like last year, it looked like a Sherrone Moore coach team thinking that he had better talent, frankly, or if Sherrone Moore coached offense. And so when they talk about meshing styles, and what I wrote after the game was, okay, it looks like you don't have an identity here or an idea of what you want to do. And it kind of reminded me of the Speed and Space years with Josh Gaddis. It's like, all right, you got to go to something that you know is going to be good for you. And I thought that's kind of what we were headed for in that first game. And granted, it was against worse competition in New Mexico. I get it. But at least what they were trying to do was play to one of their best players who they think is probably Bryce Underwood. And I think that's probably true. So I thought they panicked a little bit. I thought they went to some heavy sets that weren't going to work against a downhill defense. I thought that really caused some confusion up front and guys not playing with confidence in their blocks, maybe not in the offense. And it was an absolute disaster. People can say what they want to about Underwood and his 9 for 24. And I will say it until I'm blue in the face. It really comes down to offensive line. And if you don't have receivers that can get open either, then you're going to have an issue. I don't care who's at quarterback. So it's funny. We said this about Kirk Campbell last year, right? What do you do when you have no weapons and you have no offensive line? And on Saturday night, we kind of saw a little bit of that as well, including some predictability that really it just needs to get better. So, but it's one game, guys. It doesn't have to be a season ruiner. If they lose at Nebraska, then you're going to have some significant concern. But I picked them to lose this one. Just hope that they would show better.
I got a key stat for you guys. 8.4. What do you think that is from this game?
I do not know.
It's the average yards to go on third down for Michigan.
Yeah.
I mean, so
they got their asses kicked on third down on both sides of the ball in this game.
But a lot of that was because they couldn't run on first or second. And they couldn't pick up first downs on first or second. I mean, they had how many drives and how many third down opportunities. They only converted 3. I mean, they were in a third down almost every set of downs. They didn't really convert on first or second. They didn't get the explosive plays till later in the game when they went to McCulley a couple times. So it's a huge concern that they couldn't run. Now, give Oklahoma's defensive front and Brent Venables a ton of credit for that. But, I mean, they got outclassed on the line of scrimmage when you're Michigan and they're Oklahoma. And it should be pretty even, right? It should be, or at least you don't, maybe the other team has a slight edge on that side of the ball, but you have the edge on the other side. And it's this, the big time matchup, but it just didn't feel that way with the Michigan offensive line. They got dominated too many times, guys getting blown up in the backfield. So that was disappointing. But to put Underwood in those situations on third down was as big of an issue as them not being able to convert them.
Yeah, and a bigger concern, I don't know how good Oklahoma is yet. We'll see. I still think they're going to go 8-4 if you look at their schedule. Now, maybe they're better than I think they are, but there was no excuse for being manhandled like that. And really, their offensive line that was supposed to be a question mark really did a great job, I thought, against the Michigan front. And a bunch of guys that they were like, oh, man, they couldn't run against Illinois State or whoever they played. And they're going to have a hard time with Michigan's front seven. I thought they did more than well enough. And that was the biggest disappointment to me. Everything we've heard about the Michigan front seven, and for them to not have that much of an impact in this game was really disappointing.
And they started a true freshman at left tackle too. And he held up well. And, the takeaway, I sound like a broken record at this point, but that game boils down to Michigan got almost every single break in the game, especially when it came to turnovers, a couple penalties here and there. But Oklahoma made all the plays that were there to be had. And, the question of the night is if this game is a red flag or if it's a sign of things to come or if it's just a blip on the radar. And I think it's too early to tell. I think that, obviously, like we see the freak out on social media. We see it no bigger place than our message board. It can, when you come out and you play a game like that, it kind of confirms like all of the concerns you had about the team manifested at once in a game like that. And which of the things can get better? I mean, that's the big question on the offensive line. I don't know, because I think you're tipping plays to a certain point, and I'll give not Thomas flowers. There was a screenshot of the message board on a play where Giovanni El-Hadi was going to pull, and he's already aligned a little bit differently. So if you see that, he's going to pull. Hey, if Max Bredesen is in the slot, they're probably going to do a bubble screen. Now they did throw out of that or throw him past him last week out of that, but I think that game boils down to a couple things. First and foremost, I think when it comes to the offensive play calling, they wanted to call it the way they hoped it would go, as opposed to the way it was going. And in terms of, hey, we're going to lean on our run game. We're going to let our quarterback make a couple plays here and there, but mostly handcuff him. And we're going to lean on our defense. And the problem with that is that those gotta have it moments, that first drive of the game, that drive right before the end of the first half, the drive to ice the game, Michigan's defense didn't have it. And people say, oh, they'll shake their fist at the sky at Wink Martindale and those guys out there, and they have to be better. But the offense did absolutely nothing. And there was way too much east-west and as opposed to north-south. Couple highlights in the game when Bryce doesn't run, but he's on the move a little bit. You finally got the 40-plus yard pass play monkey off your back with a shot down the field to Donovan McCulley. Those are two things I think you need to build on and do a little bit more of. And this is a big week for them in terms of, Central Michigan's not good. Jokes aside about my alma mater, all of it, they're not good. There's no reason you shouldn't bury them and win by 40 points. And everything needs to be crisp and concise. And you want to see a group bought in, because Saturday I just saw a lot of things take place that felt like we're done with a lack of conviction and no confidence at all.
Yeah, Rayshon Benny, we're seeing here on the screen for those listening, was really a non-factor. And if you look at the PFF grades, that was the case as well. Your stars have got it. Your better players have got to be the really good players in games like these. Really, we talk about the 40-plus yard pass. That was kind of a miracle, right? He pulls it off a guy's helmet because he's not turned around. So you can't.
Great play.
It was a great play. There's no question about it. And yeah, I understand giving him an opportunity for that, but I'm not going to call it a fluke because it was a fantastic catch, and maybe they need to do more of that. But
you called it a miracle.
What's that?
You called it a miracle.
A miracle. You know what I mean? It was really I said kind of flukish, but more than anything, I didn't see receivers beating defensive backs, and we didn't expect that either. We said they probably needed to go to the portal and get another receiver. And they said, well, we feel pretty good about the crew that we have. But when Donovan McCulley, a guy who didn't play at Indiana last year, is your, number one guy, then to me at Michigan, that's a concern. So, and how nice would Skylar Bell have looked in a Michigan uniform, guys? So that's a bummer as well. So there's just not enough there. And I want to go back and look. I don't remember what the run pass ratio was or the first drive for Michigan. There were a couple really nice plays. Wasn't there a nice throw from Bryce Underwood to Samaj Morgan, who was wide open? Yeah. And I really thought we would see more of that instead of, what they thought would work, smash work against this team, against a defense that was running downhill, and they made no adjustments. And as Doug Skeen said on our podcast today, where are the traps? If you've got a defense that's going to be that aggressive, I remember the 1993 Rose Bowl against a Washington team that was doing the same thing. They ran a couple traps right off the bat, and Tyrone Wheatley takes them to the house for big yardage. So, but the adjustments weren't there. Was really disappointed in the intensity. I was really disappointed in the body language. Everybody points to play calling. And somebody asks over here, how much of that was Sherrone Moore and how much of that is Chip Lindsey? Honestly, I think a lot of it's Sherrone Moore and how he wants to play, because he did say we're going to blend our ideas and our offense. If you talk to people last year, as Clay would know, who were around, they'd said that Sherrone Moore was a very heavy influence on what plays were called. So it looked really, really similar to me too, agreeing with somebody over here in the comments. So there's a common denominator here. And I think that Sherrone's got to do a little bit of soul searching here and say, hey, what are our strengths? This might be who we want to be, but is that really the best way to win?
Yeah, I thought, they trusted Bryce Underwood in game one when you think to 3rd and 14, right, on their own 21. And Jason Eck from New Mexico is calling timeouts, trying to get the ball back. It's only a 7-point game. They throw, relatively deep to Channing Goodwin, 39-yard gain. They're throwing play action from their own 6, and, Bryce Underwood's flipping it out to Marlon Klein. And I know you're playing a completely different opponent, so that was going to be the true test of how much do they trust him, how much do they trust the protection, how aggressive do they want to be? Are they coaching to kind of not turn it over and kind of hang around and stay in the game, or are they coaching to kind of win the game? And I thought a lot of the play calling, especially early before they opened it up just a little bit, was kind of telling. The first third down of the game, Chris, you mentioned they had the 19-yard gain to Samaj Morgan early that, kind of Oklahoma comes down and scores. They can, Michigan picks up that big gain. And you're thinking, okay, this is going to be, a game here potentially, of course, very early at that point. But they get to third down, swing pass to Justice Haynes. Doesn't work. It's blown up. They have a guy unblocked. Second third down of the game, straight drop back. Found Donovan McCulley. That's a nice gain on 3rd and 9. But there were too many of them. Screen to Samaj Morgan on 3rd and 14. Throw to Samaj Morgan on an out route short of the sticks on 3rd and 5. Hand off to Justice Haynes on 3rd and 6. They pick up a 3rd and 1 just barely later in the game. 3rd and 2 in the red zone, low red zone, when you had McCulley in miscommunication. He was blocking Justice, RPO. Bryce throws it. They call the flag. They pick it up. 3rd and 13, slip screen to Justice Haynes. 3rd and 23, handoff to Haynes. Actually gave Hudson Hollenbeck enough room to punt out of the back of the end zone. He booms one. Cole Sullivan recovers the muff. So that one worked out in a weird way. 3rd and 6, run right up the middle. Don't go for it on 4th and 2. Like, there were just some questionable stuff there all night on some of those 3rd downs. I know it's a freshman quarterback, but I feel like you weren't going to win that game if you didn't dial up the risk just a little bit more. And they didn't feel like didn't feel like, to me, they were willing to do that. And yet they still did have the ball late with the shot. But like you said, some things had to go their way for that to be there. They didn't create that really on their own with the offense.
And they did say, somebody over here says undisciplined at times. I thought so too, with gap integrity on defense and not containing the edges and not being on the same page on how many plays, right? How many times did Bryce Underwood play fake to air, right, when his back's going the other way? The 3rd and 2 play, which never should have happened. 3rd and 2, you're 7 down, 7-0. You're 3rd and 2 from the 14, and you've got a great opportunity to tie that football game. And they throw it to Donovan McCulley, who is engaged with a defensive back. And they threw a pass interference flag, but rightfully they picked it up because Donovan McCulley wasn't a receiver on that play. He was blocking somebody, and that should never happen. You got 2 plays, 2 runs to get a 1st down, and you continue your drive. And so that should, whether it's, whatever it was, never should have been in that position. So maybe that was the crux of the argument between Justice Haynes and Bryce Underwood. Maybe Bryce took it upon himself to do something we won't know and they won't tell us. But that's inexcusable in a game like that. And then to miss the field goal was just ridiculous. Another play that was critical. You're down 14-7. You're starting to get the momentum back after the huge run by Justice Haynes. And you've got a clear shot with your safety, Brendan Hillman, on the quarterback, and he lets him get out of there with terrible fundamental tackling. And instead of a sack and getting the ball back, it's a big play, a passing play. He gets out of there, and it's a big passing play, and they go up 21-7. So that can't happen. That shouldn't happen. And I don't like the play action in which when you've got your offensive line struggling enough anyway, and you're doing these play fakes with the ball is behind, you aren't able to survey the field because you're turning around and not noticing things right away. Really, I didn't care for that either.
I don't agree with this, but Brian paid $2, so we'll put it on the screen. He says Moore sounds like Day from 21 to 22, soft and won't run the QB. I don't think he sounds like Ryan Day for a number of reasons. However, I will say, Sherrone, like if we just look at how that game played out, and if the hypothesis is true, is that they thought they could kind of vintage Michigan their way through that, like a Harbaugh era type of game where it's conservative, you're kicking instead of going, things like that. The problem with that approach is that Jim Harbaugh coached teams were so honed in and so locked in on the details, and they didn't beat themselves, and there weren't missed assignments all over the place. And on defense, guys were, tackled well. I was actually surprised looking at the PFF grades that they were not as low as I thought they would be. I thought we'd see a lot more red and orange in that chart. And it lends itself to, does this team, and I saw Joel Klatt talk about this, we've talked about it, do they have a bit of an identity crisis right now? Like you're kind of at a point where you need to make a decision, like what the best version of this team is. Now, I don't think it's worse than last year's team. I don't, especially on offense. Like we're seeing them hit some of those home runs that they just never did last year. Now you got to lock into, like Sherrone Moore said today as we move into his Monday press conference, how do you pick up more of those 4, 5, 6 yard runs? How do you, sustain drives on the ground? How do you he said the focus this week will be on the how of it all. As we head into this 2-game suspension that he'll serve, he's not. So the way this is going to work is he will be able to coach this week up until midnight on Friday, to where he's out of the picture for 8 days. Biff Poggi will be the interim head coach. He will coach on Saturdays. The coordinators will be completely in charge and responsible for their unit. So Biff is going to have the headset on, and he's going to be making those decisions. those type of game management things, which there will be collaboration on. But this needs to be a week where you come out and you hammer CMU and you look crisp doing it, and you've picked a lane in terms of, hey, we have Bryce Underwood at quarterback. We're going to take some shots down the field. We're going to do those play action passes. We're going to get him on the move. If we're not going to run him, and we'll talk about that in a second here, they need to get him on the move and let him make plays that way. You need to give defenses something to defend. Everything about this is an identity week for them. And it's not so much about getting back to what vintage Michigan was from 21 to 23. It's figuring out what is this team and what do we want to be and showcase and build on this Saturday heading into next week's game at Nebraska.
Yeah, exactly. And Biff Poggi's not going to be out there calling plays and overruling anybody. It's going to be Chip Lindsey running the offense. It's going to be Wink Martindale running the defense, which is exactly what Sherrone Moore said on Monday as well. And you look at Biff, and he's going to be a figurehead out there, right? Maybe he decides whether to go for it with input from the coaches or whatever. But it was clear when Chip Lindsey decided he was going to be in the press box calling plays that Biff Poggi was probably going to be the guy on the field, but he's not going to be the one running the show. It's going to be the coordinators. And what's going to be interesting to me is how this team looks, against Central Michigan, but Sherrone Moore is contributing to the game plan here. But next week at Nebraska, what's it going to look like when Sherrone Moore can't? And is it going to be a completely different offense than what we saw against Oklahoma? Is it going to be the offense that we saw in week 1? And is it going to have Sherrone's fingerprints on it at all? Or is it going to be Chip Lindsey, right? So that's what I'm anxious to see. And how much of that was Sherrone Moore and how much of that is Chip Lindsey when it comes to the offense, as people are asking. So, and I think it's a fair question. But to me, these are the Central Michigan game is a get well game. And I don't really care how it looks. It's about healing, guys getting healed up, everything else. And you don't get style points. It's that Nebraska game that is now the litmus test game that is going to determine the direction of the rest of the season. So as long as Oklahoma is just one of those crappy games and all right, you put it behind you and you continue to improve, then you're going to be fine. But if it's indicative of the way this team is going to play the rest of the year, undisciplined and going into a shell, not running Bryce Underwood in a big game like this, then, this could be an 8-4 football team.
Yeah. And if they didn't learn a lot of lessons from Saturday night and apply those lessons that they learned, then who knows how much better they're going to play when they're in environments or spots like that. Now that could be one of the tougher teams they play all season, but you're going on the road in some tough environments coming up. And now that Nebraska game, to your point, Chris, is so much bigger than if they would have won against Oklahoma. If they beat Oklahoma, then, that's maybe your loss. It's nice to have the win in hand going to a game like that, as opposed to having lost against Oklahoma. And now you got to win that. Otherwise you're 2-2 after going 7-5 last regular season. And you start to think, okay, are we just going to be a 500 type of team during regular seasons? I mean, the bowl win was great, obviously, as well. But, as far as managing beginning of years and getting off to slow starts and all this, you're going to have to start to question all that. Sherrone Moore, luckily, is with the team to be able to clean this stuff up after the Saturday night game, can coach all week. He said he's going to be at the hotel and Schembechler Hall till late Friday night. It's 12:01 a.m. when he can no longer be with the team until 11:59 p.m. When they are out in Lincoln on September 20th. I'd imagine he doesn't make the trip, but he'll be ready to go that next Sunday. So, it's kind of fun to picture, and we'll see it on Saturday. Biff Poggi as Michigan's head coach. It's funny.
Will be in sleeves, by the way.
I was about to say he will wear sleeves. I think that's a Sherrone Moore. He's had to wear sleeves here at Michigan. He wore, of course, the manually cut off shirts when he was the head coach at Charlotte in 2023, 2024. He'll wear sleeves here. Sherrone is making him do that. But 66-year-old Biff Poggi going to run out with the team out of that Eastern Tunnel at the corner of Stadium in Maine there on Saturday night. Will he jump up, touch the banner? Can he touch the banner? I don't think he will. The coaches don't seem to do that. But I talked to Hunter Bailey, a guy who covers Charlotte football for the Charlotte Observer, and he said Biff is aggressive on fourth downs and they had some issues with timeouts and things like that when he was at Charlotte in game. But I don't imagine he's going to call it how he would for his team. He's going to call it a little bit differently.
They don't fit right in.
Yeah. But he'll call it how I think Sherrone Moore would want it. So we'll see. And the coordinator.
How does he want it? That's what we don't know anymore. It's like
I don't think Sherrone knows how he wants it.
There's no rhyme or reason to it. You run on 3rd and 6 and get 4 yards, and then you kick a field goal on 4th and 2, right? I mean, in the past, when you've got 3rd and 2, you're running twice and you're getting the first down. You're behind Max Bredesen, so they punt into the end zone instead of trying a long field goal that really would have given them a shot in the arm, and you really didn't have a whole hell of a lot to lose, right? You gained 18 yards on the punt. You've got a punter who, okay, to his credit, Hudson Hollenbeck did get a good one down there the first time, but he's been inconsistent really in the last few weeks that we've seen him, the first 3 times that we've seen him. So play your strengths and be aggressive and play with confidence, and it will probably rub off on your players. So, but those were all questions that I had. And again, I don't think it's going to be just Biff Poggi making those calls. I think like Sherrone said, everybody will have a say.
Yeah, the coordinators will be heavily involved with that, and I'm sure him and Sherrone will go over it well before 12:01 a.m. on Saturday too, like what they want to do. And against Central Michigan, you may just go for every 4th down that's close and in relatively good field position and things like that. And you'll pick them all up and it'll look great. It's all about the Nebraska game with this, but at least he gets a little bit of a test run, I think, in this week's game. Of course, now Central Michigan will come in and win. Now that I say that, but no, it'll be really interesting to watch. I think it makes sense. I predicted this as soon as back in the spring when it came out that Sherrone Moore was going to be suspended. It makes all the sense in the world to kind of let the coordinators coordinate, have Biff Poggi be the guy kind of rallying the troops and getting the guys going. The players absolutely love this guy, and how could you not? And I want to read my favorite Biff Poggi tweet. Is from January 13, 2016. He says, "Nothing is better than being on a ball team. Nothing like ball. Nothing like a team. Nothing better than being on a ball team. Nothing." And now Biff Poggi will be leading that ball team on Saturday.
Sounds like Jim Harbaugh, frankly.
Yeah, he did at Jim Harbaugh, at Coach Jim for you.
Yep.
Couple super chats here. One from Go Blue 982. They're both from Go Blue 982. $5 a piece. He says, "I didn't expect a win at Oklahoma, but I didn't see them pushing us around and more looking lost. But I'd rather lose now and still fix it than lose later to MSU or worse." And then he follows it up with, "Correction. I didn't expect we'd get pushed around like that. Lots to fix." And I would agree with that. We'll leave that up for a little bit here as we head into more takeaways from Sherrone Moore's Monday press conference.
I do want to comment on that. If he loses to Michigan State, then he loses a good portion of the fan base, because that is not a game that they should lose. I don't know how Michigan State looked against Boston College. I know Boston College isn't very good, but I do know that Aiden Childs had a pretty good game, it sounds like. So, and they put up some points. So, but that is not a game that you can lose. That's a game that you'd better not lose. So, also, I wanted to go back. We didn't get the last part of the first super chat when he asked about Bryce Underwood potentially transferring. Come on, let's not start with that crap, right? He's in game 2. And I'm not upset about the question, and I understand that. But thoughts on concerned Bryce transfers? Come on, the guy's got his money. He's here. If it were to happen, it happens, but I'm not going to sit there and start wringing my hands over, okay, is this guy thinking about transferring when he's 2 games into his career?
And I think
I'll just say, I think that's a Chicken Little mentality after one game of adversity. So
or is he, but it's right after a question about, do we keep the smash mouth run first style? Maybe he means if they keep doing that, is he going to transfer? But here's the thing. Bryce Underwood came to Michigan knowing what Michigan football is. He loved Michigan football growing up. He always wanted to play here. Once they get the resources to be able to get him, he decides to stay home instead of having to go elsewhere for some of that. So he knew what he was signing up for. He's 2 games in. They did run a lot. It was pretty conservative on Saturday, but he's a true freshman in a tough environment. I think they were trying to protect him a little bit. I don't necessarily agree with a lot of those calls, but it's going to evolve, and the ball's going to be in his hands a lot over the next few years. So, I mean, anyone can transfer at any time. So I guess you could have concern about Nate Afobe transferring or anyone else with eligibility transferring. Pick a guy, Cole Sullivan or whatever. But to go down the list and worry about who's going to transfer and who's not after 2 games makes no sense.
Yeah, and a point I didn't make earlier was in a game where a lot of guys look frazzled, even on the sideline, the coaching staff. I did not think Bryce Underwood was one of them. I didn't think I didn't take a lot of chances with him. I said on the show yesterday that I think you could have maybe taken a few more shots down the field or threw the ball a couple more times. And, even if he throws a pick, do you come out of that game feeling any different about it? I just feel like it was a wasted opportunity in an environment like that to maybe not cut him loose. Like he wasn't going to throw 40 times and run 10 times. But when you come out of a game like that at Oklahoma and you really feel like you didn't use him much, to me, that feels like a missed opportunity. And it leads into the next thing I was going to talk about. Sherrone Moore asked today about, you watched the Sunday Night Football game last night and you have Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen running around the field making plays. And Bryce probably a little more Josh Allen than Lamar Jackson, but still kind of a dual threat guy who can pick up first down with his legs. Certainly has a big arm down the field. I believe that was the player comp that Charles Power put on him coming out of high school. So not an unfair archetype to compare him to, but Sherrone asked if they were looking to run him more. And he said, yeah, they probably will at some point. But he also said, if you want to run your quarterback, that you better have 2 of them. And there's a lot of ways. That's what he said at Big Ten Media Days too. There's a lot of ways you can go with that. To me, you run that through the old Google Translate or the Coach Speak Translate. They don't feel good about it, having a quarterback right now that is either willing or not willing, able or healthy enough to lead the offense. If he does take a hit where maybe it's not even a season-ending injury, maybe he's just out for a series or a set of downs. That's their reason for playing this a bit conservatively. And I don't agree with it. I think you're taking one of your best, one of your most explosive weapons and holstering it, but that is how they feel right now.
And I don't think that they care about a series or 2. I think they worry about like a big game or, a couple week injury or something like that, or a season ending injury with him because there is no number 2. He said Mikey Keene was full go today. We've seen him warm up, guys. He's having a really hard time getting any velocity on the ball. So he might be full go, but his arm strength isn't where it needs to be. And Jaden Davis I don't think is capable of playing at this level. And I think they know that. I think that's very clear. At the same time, he did say we will run him more. We thought about it more against Oklahoma. And I was the one that asked him that question at Big Ten Media Day, because it just seemed like to me, you are only using half of this young man's ability if you're just trusting his arm. And I understand that's, he's got an NFL arm and he's going to be outstanding in that respect, but he can move. He's shown some instincts. We've seen him play at the prep level. This isn't Alex Orji back there that has no clue what to do, whether he's running or throwing, right? This guy has great football instincts and you need to take advantage of that. And I think the problem I have is now he's hearing the criticisms. It's kind of like last year when everybody was criticizing Davis Warren. And he said, yeah, we got to go to Alex Orji. And it almost seemed like it was in response to the backlash for why aren't they playing Alex Orji? Now is he going this route because of the backlash to the response that they aren't running Bryce Underwood, when all along that was probably your best move, in my opinion anyway. So I want him to be decisive. I want him to look at it and say, I am doing this team a disservice if we don't run this kid and take advantage of all of his skills. And so I think you're going to see him move more. I hope we're going to see him move more, because I think there is so much that you can do with a guy like that we have seen over the years, usually against Michigan, right? That Michigan's had a really tough time defending. And no, he's not Donovan McNabb, but the guy can move. And I think there are a lot of things you can do with him.
Yeah, or John Mateer, who was, so good, like in those short, small areas on Saturday night, just finding the right lane to take. And I think Bryce Underwood needs more experience until he gets to somewhere like that level. And John Mateer squats 475 pounds, and his lower half is built like a fullback or linebacker. So he's not quite that, but there's more you can do with him. And I think, to me, he said, we will at some point. We're planning on doing that, opening up the run game with him. And he says, in the same answer, well, you can't run your quarterback if you don't have 2. They clearly don't have 2, as you guys both said. So that's really what they're waiting on. Now, here's the thing. You don't have 2 quarterbacks. The backup quarterback is Jaden Davis, who didn't get in the bowl game after Davis Warren got hurt. They opted to go with Orji to essentially hand it off and throw one interception. And he was in the transfer portal. Like, if Bryce gets hurt, you're screwed. But if you don't move the ball, score points, and win games, you're also screwed. And that's really what matters. So there's got to be a balance. I think Oklahoma did take away Bryce on some of those read options on Saturday. I also think that they have to do more of them and keep the defense honest, because they're getting the box stacked against them. And, it's a numbers game at a certain point on some of those plays. So they're going to have to get his legs involved on those to even up the numbers. But so we'll see if they do it. We'll see if Chip Lindsey calls it more the next few weeks. But hopefully by midseason, they've kind of figured out what they can and can't do, what they want to do with him, and that hopefully the quarterback depth improves, because they could use a capable backup. You never know what could happen in any game. You watch football at any level. I mean, backups are coming in games for, at times, because they have to. And that could happen to Michigan at some point this season. It could be the difference whether you win or lose a game.
Yeah, and I don't like these types of comments or conversations like, oh, well, you're paying the guy. Why don't you do this? Why don't you let him do that? But the investment you made in Bryce Underwood was the skill set, like what he can bring to your offense. So I feel like if you kind of have the shackles on him, you are wasting, you're not getting that return on investment that you made in him. If that was what you were going to do, then you don't make the pursuit that they did last year and you just go after a Miller Moss in the transfer portal, right? Like, there's a reason that you brought this guy here beyond just number one recruit in the backyard. You brought him here because of the talent and the skill set. Danielle Schutz, I'm very sorry that I missed this at the top of the show. 199 super chat. We'll read it right now. Did the big package work for the most part? Love you guys. No, nothing worked.
And it's not going to work with this line, Daniel. That's what you got to understand. This is not the 2021 to 2023 line. You got to play to your strengths, which frankly is still your quarterback. I don't care what anybody says. He's going to be good. And you've got a guy that gets the ball out and gets it out quickly. They are not going to be able to push people around with this offensive line. I think that's pretty clear. I'll be honest. I think Andrew Babalola was a bigger loss than we first thought, if you think about it. Here's a guy that physically is the part. The interior line was so bad, guys. Maybe Babalola plays left tackle and you move Link inside or something like that. But they were lost. Brady Norton looked like he was trying to keep the dam from breaking a few times. Greg Crippen got run over on one play where he was playing too high. So it's one of those things where, yeah, in theory, you want to smash and you want to control the ball. But and also to Clay's point, about, well, Bryce Underwood knew what he was signing up for. Well, he had conversations with Chip Lindsey and with Sherrone Moore about what the offense was going to look like. And I can guarantee you that Sherrone didn't say, we're going to run the ball a lot and you're just going to be, you're going to run it out and hand it off 30 times in a row. No, it wasn't that. He had an understanding that it was going to look a lot more like it did in week one. So if I were him, and, when you talk about transferring and stuff like that, that's silly. But, I want the kind of offense that is tailored to my abilities, not something that, JJ McCarthy kind of endured at times. And JJ McCarthy asked Sherrone Moore after that Penn State game. He went up to him. He said, "Don't you trust me, coach?" And he said, No, it's not that. It's nothing like that. It said, I didn't trust the line at that point to protect you. And, but at this point, when you've got a guy like Bryce Underwood, you're not going to have him handing off that many times. So this is going to be hopefully more of the offense that we saw in week one. Is it a little bit more finesse? Yeah, but it's going to have to be, in my opinion, because they just don't have the guys up front.
Yeah. And I mean, Lindsey did come in after Bryce, but I mean,
yeah.
I think that Sherrone was probably planning on hiring somebody who was, and he talked about it, kind of really after Kirk Campbell, he made that move that he wanted to get more explosive and whatever. I mean, it's kind of a word you're never going to say we're going to bring in a less explosive, but more consistent, coordinator, whatever. Everyone wants to be explosive, but the heavy package did work on the first play of the game. They got a solid gain. And then on the first play of the second half, 7 offensive linemen in there. Giovanni Alhadi was down. So you were on Lawrence Hattar and Blake Frazier on the left side of the line, unbalanced line. And Justice Haynes is an incredible running back, forced 8 missed tackles in this game. But this one, if you're not gap sound on him, he's going to make you pay. Go 75 yards, Michigan's longest run since. Donovan Edwards went 85. in Columbus to seal that one 45-23 win over the Ohio State Buckeyes.
And as Skeen said, that was two guys being way overzealous on defense and way out of position. That should have been a 5-yard gain probably. The cutback lane was there, which is fantastic. So, yeah, it worked. Was it designed to go 75 yards? No, that was a terrible defensive play by Oklahoma. But, hey, that was the biggest play of the game. And I guess since it came in a heavy package, I guess we can say the heavy package worked.
Well, I mean, it was great blocking, and even a 5-yard gain would mean it worked, right? So the play worked, but then when you have a guy like Haynes in there, he can make you pay.
Yeah, but more than
Go ahead.
No,
I was just going to say.
Go ahead, Anthony.
I was just going to say that regardless if it was a blown assignment or blown play by the defense or not, when Justice Haynes makes that play, you've got a hat on the hat. And that didn't happen. That hasn't happened enough. So just credit for that, I guess.
Yep. No question. And more often than not, I mean, how many runs of less than 3 yards were there, guys? There were a ton, I think, on Saturday night. And then, of course, I really thought the way that the game ended, unfortunately, was kind of poetic justice, right? You got 4th and 1 at midfield and you lose 2 yards trying to run the ball. So just not their night. But again, it doesn't have to define the season. I think they'll get better. I think, again, that Nebraska game is going to tell us a ton.
Yeah, hopefully a much needed wake up call. Just have to be a little more detail sound everywhere. One last note from Sherrone's press conference injury wise. Sounds like Marlon Klein's going to practice Tuesday and Wednesday. They'll see if he can go. Sounds like there's a really good chance that Rod Moore at least is back this week in a limited capacity. He did warm up last weekend at Oklahoma. Gio El-Hadi, it doesn't seem like that's kind of a day thing right now. And there's one other one that I'm missing. What was it, Clayton?
You have Shamari Earls come back. Zeke Berry, very mild injury. Same thing you said Saturday night. But Earls coming back. Caleb Anderson likely to come back as well. So, I mean, they had to throw in Jaden Sanders in there, the true freshman who, Earls is also a true freshman, but on Saturday night. And he didn't screw up. So, I mean, it kind of worked out. But the cornerback depth has been kind of rough.
It has. All right, I think we're ready for questions. What do you say? We'll take a few from the chat here. Joe X says, it's bad, really bad that the O-line is still an obvious issue. It has to be dealt with, but how?
Now? I mean, now you just continue to get guys reps. I mean, you're not going to fire anybody in midseason. So you're going to continue to experiment with which guys do best when they're in practice and who grades out best on the field. So if Gio doesn't play this week, and I doubt he does, when they say day to day with guys like that, it could be a high ankle sprain for all we know, right? We don't know. We'll try to get some more information on that for next week's chat, but it's just going to come with reps, and then you hope for the best and just can continue to coach them. But guys, the technique has been really bad at times. And when guys don't play with confidence and when they lose their technique, you see what you saw on Saturday night, which is Greg Crippen getting steamrolled and knocked on his butt. You see guys missing assignments. It just wasn't good. And Gio wasn't even good before he got hurt. So you need your veterans to play like veterans. And right now they're not. So you're kind of hamstrung. But I don't think they're going to see a whole lot of fronts like they did against Oklahoma. And we saw Nebraska play guys. They're a lot smaller than that. Doesn't mean they can't give them fits, though. And environment, can create confidence issues as well. But I'm confident that I'm hoping that that's the worst we're going to see them play for several weeks here.
I was going to say, I think they can play better than they did. I also think that this line may not have that high of a potential. I think some of the issues are a lack of talent at a number of these positions, guys that have just been here a long time and haven't really proven themselves as all Big Ten type of players. And Michigan's used to having all Big Ten type of players up front. When you think of 2023 and 2022, 2021, a 2019 line had a ton of talent, and first team, unanimous all Big Ten guys. There's just not that guy right now. I think some of these guys could be that individual down the road, like Andrew Sprague, he's just a redshirt freshman, and Blake Frazier coming in and has looked good in a limited role the last couple of weeks and things like that. But as far as the guys that are out there right now in their current form, it doesn't feel like the talent is really that there. There as much. A lot of the talent's younger guys. Andrew Babalola's hurt. right? Ty Haywood's not physically ready to play yet, or maybe mentally ready, whatever it is. So you're just going to have to improve as much as you can, become a solid line, hopefully, and kind of play to your strengths elsewhere.
I don't know that the ceiling I don't think is super high. I think the ceiling is, can they get to average-ish, maybe on either side of that incrementally? The talent's not there. And when you have guys like Greg Crippen, Gio Elhadi making these pretty basic errors still, these guys have been in the program for 5 years. I don't know what that switch is going to flip for either of them, right? And when you go back to some of those lines from a couple years ago, I don't want to be this guy, but the best players were either recruited by Ed Warner or they were from the transfer portal, like the 3 centers that they brought in, and their 2 best linemen last year were portal guys. So I think it's going to take a while to really fix this to where it's in a place they want. And they've recruited much better the last couple of years, but those are still lotto tickets too. So have to recruit better, have to grow and develop a little better as well. Go Blue 982 for $2 says, if Jaden Davis isn't up to snuff, why keep him there?
Wait, we're going to put him. We're going to send him. You're going to trade him to somebody for a player to be named later. It doesn't work that way in college football. So I think Jaden will probably get his degree here. I don't know, maybe 3 years, and then maybe transfer somewhere else would be my gut feeling. It'd be wonderful if he developed into a great Big Ten quarterback and a good backup. But I just think that there are some limitations there. So, but this isn't going to be the program where they say, okay, you're not good enough, you got to go, type of thing. Guys are still going to have the options to really fulfill their time here if they want to.
He's currently their number 2 quarterback. Like, you don't want to send a guy like that away. No. They brought in Jake Garcia in the summer, but clearly either doesn't know the playbook or hasn't been able to beat out Jaden Davis at this point. So, I mean, you need guys. They don't even have that many bodies in that room in general. So there's nowhere to send him. I mean, you're glad he's here. And you are also, I mean, he seems like an awesome kid and somebody who's worked really hard this offseason. So you have to credit him for doing everything that he possibly can, right? To improve and be a good teammate and all these things. And from all accounts, the way Bryce Underwood talks about him, he's done that. So, I mean, there's nowhere to send a guy like that. I think that's a little ridiculous.
Send him to the Toledo Mud Hens. That's what he wants. DI114N says, what's the likelihood Michigan gets serious playmakers around Bryce in the next year or two? I think quite high.
Yeah, very good based on some intel we got Friday night, even, as a matter of fact, fellas. So there are people behind the scenes working to make that happen. And again, as Sean McGee, Michigan's GM, says, we are looking at fit too, and that's important. It's extremely important. You got to have guys that fit, and you have to have great chemistry. I think the jury is still out on the chemistry on this team. They talk about how close it is, but we'll find out, especially when things go poorly, how do guys react? So, but Savion Hyder is going to be coming in. You've got, and I guarantee you they will go to the portal for some receivers. I guarantee you that if there are any agents out there who are looking to move their guys, they're going to call Michigan saying, hey, don't you want somebody to go with Bryce Underwood? That's just the way the game is these days.
Yeah, they're going to go after and probably land some really talented receivers in the portal. This is kind of the year where you don't necessarily have those guys. You're in between. So you need to figure it out between Donovan McCulley and Marlon Klein when he comes back healthy. And by the way, I don't think Marlon Klein should play this weekend. I think Rod Moore should, to get some reps, and I think Klein should sit, because that brace, or whatever you want to call it, on his right ankle is as big as I've ever seen, and he was moving super slow out there. But you're going to have to kind of piece it together this year, I feel like, and then next year maybe you have some of the more talent around him.
And you hope at a certain point that Bryce grows to a point where he's elevating guys that are here already too. But yeah, without question, hey, there might be money in the coffers for a playmaker, but we might need to pony up for at least one starting offensive lineman, if not 2. Going to take one from our message board now. This is from Ohio Wolverine. He says, do you think we're seeing the full Chip Lindsey offense, or are we seeing a brutal mashing of 2 philosophies that they need to sort out? We have talked about this a little bit. He said Chip was the only non-Harbaugh Moore tree coach to come in, and it seems like there's an identity crisis that they're caught between.
Yeah, we talked about this. I wrote about it. I said, you are. It's like, okay, are you going to trust your OC? He was a coordinator. It's got to be hard for an offensive coordinator who's a head coach now to say, okay, I'm relinquishing everything to you and do it your way, even though my way has worked so well. So I think the idea of blending them, made sense. You can still be physical in Chip Lindsey's offense, I think is the point that Lindsey was always trying to make. But if things go poorly in a game and you start to panic and you say, okay, we're going to switch gears and do this instead, then you're kind of sending the wrong message, right? In my opinion, first year team, right? Okay, now everything we've practiced all week, are we going to all of a sudden go into a shell and do this? And what are you doing to your quarterback and his mindset? So I want to see more of Chip Lindsey. We've spoken with enough people who have spoken highly of him, and we've seen his offenses do really good things and put up good numbers. So to me, you got to trust him if you hired him.
Yeah, I don't really have a ton on that. I feel like, we already kind of talked about the offense. I feel like it was way too conservative. Hopefully they learn from that. Trust Bryce a little bit more going forward.
Put him in better positions to succeed. Yep.
I've got one just for you, Clayton. I should say I have a question for you as well. It's a basketball question from Hoops Coach N3D. He says, 3-point shooting was sometimes inconsistent last season. How much better of a perimeter shooting team do you think Michigan will be this year? And who will be those consistent long-range snipers?
Clay.
I love this. We're coming off a disastrous football loss, and basketball gets in just before the buzzer. I think your best shooters, Namari Burnett, Trey McKinney, Winters Grady. I think that Elliot Cadeau is going to get you a lot of open shots. Same with Yaxel Lendeborg. He's going to have a gravitational pull around him, with defenders collapsing on him. So guys are going to get open shots, and if Roddy Gale can improve his shot, you should have some solid shooters, but I don't think they have that other than Burnett, the proven guy, which makes it kind of a concern on paper coming in. But
we had a spy at a practice that said the freshman, he said Grady is an absolute sniper, and we've seen that too. So Trey McKinney, though, is underrated in that respect. The guy has no fear and can shoot it. So that's exciting. And on another note, just got a message from John Beeline as we were doing this. How do I get on your site? And should we comp this guy? Who is this guy?
Well, he had a big contract. Let's make him.
What's going on here? Come on.
Let's get him in. Let's get him in on that promo code UM1 for 2 months of access for $1. We'll let him see if he likes it or not.
I will comp John Beeline until the day he is dead for everything that he has done
Absolutely.
for the program. And
hey, can you ask John what he thinks about running the ball on 3rd and 6 and then send the field goal team out?
He wants to read our comments on that, so that's going to be interesting. But he loves football. His Bills lost a heartbreaker last night, which is unfortunate. But what a game that was, huh, fellas? Well, they actually won last night, didn't they? Did they win?
The Bills won, yeah.
The Bills won, yeah.
My coach. So yeah, but what a game!
Well, I'll tell you what. You tell Beeline, you get him access and say he's got to come on here with us though on a Monday.
That'd be great.
Night.
He'd be happy to do it. He will do it on a Monday night. I guarantee it. He's banged up right now. He had a little fall, but he's getting better.
Working through something.
Again, nobody I respect more than John Beeline in any business.
And he'll be at the game Saturday. Is that right?
He will be at the game Saturday. He said he's going to be upstairs sitting in the box, so he's doing well.
Oh, awesome. Well, looking forward to seeing him. Looking forward to, we're going to comp Coach B, of course, but for the rest of you, use that promo code UM1 we have one more super chat. Sorry. From Michigan Go Blue 1234. All will be okay. Let's think about Gale versus A&M, and all is good. I think he just hit I just got a text. He just hit another one out there in Denver, I'm told. So shout out to Roddy Gale. That's going to do it for us. Again, promo code UM1 gets you 2 months of access for $1. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel. I'm going to keep hammering this home. Over half of the people that watch our videos are not subscribed. Hit that subscribe button right now. It's going to put us in your feeds. It's going to notify you when we go live. And it helps pay the bills, keep the lights on around here. So for Chris Ballas, Clayton Safey, our producer Megan behind the scenes, I'm Anthony Broom. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll talk to you again later this week to preview the showdown with the Chippewas. Big in-state rivalry game coming up. Talk to you later.